the chair nobody threw away. The village hall at St Jude's has a particular smell in November. Cold radiators, beginning to try, coffee brewed too strong and kept too long in the kitchen hatch, old wood holding on to every winter event it had seen, which, in the case of St Jude's village hall, was a considerable number. On a Tuesday morning, with the winter coffee morning 10 days away, one of the volunteers arrived to lay out the hall and discovered the trouble before she had even put her coat down. She lifted the first chair from the stack along the far wall. The back leg gave way. Not a wobble, not a warning, just a clean, decisive crack. And then a woman standing in the middle of a cold hall, holding an armful of furniture with a slightly bewildered expression. The second chair held. The third made itself known with a long, descending creak when weight was applied, which was, in the language of elderly woodwork, a fairly clear no. By 11 o'clock, the matter had been elevated to a situation. Sarah Logan arrived from the general shop on her lunch break with a tablet, a biscuit from her pocket, and several pages of search results she had already sorted by relevance. Gavin Price came over from the garage and crouched beside the worst chair with the careful expression of a man diagnosing a difficult engine. After a thorough examination, he announced that the joints had gone. He then borrowed a chair that was still working, sat on it, and offered no further opinions. "We can't have chairs giving way at the coffee morning," Sarah said, already scrolling. "I've found a charity. They donate to village halls. 30 matching ones, grey with rubber feet." Nobody said anything against it. In the particular silence of a room where no one wants to be the person who says something, Sarah took out her phone and sent an inquiry. The broken chair sat in the middle of the hall with its loose leg pointing at the ceiling, the small and stubborn residue of a difficult morning. Gavin went back to the garage. Sarah went back to the shop. The hall went quiet. Mr. Collins let himself into the hall the following morning with a key he had kept since the chess club. He set a wooden tool caddy on the nearest table, took off his coat, folded it over a chair that was still reliable, and without any further ceremony, began. The caddy held a canvas roll of chisels, arranged from narrow to broad, a small pot of woodworking glue, a bottle of white spirit, and a square tin of brass screws. These were not improvised. They were the tools of a man who had learned the job properly and saw no reason to make a performance of it. For a while, the only sounds in the hall were the scrape of a chisel testing a joint, the small tap of a wooden mallet, and the quiet, slightly tacky sound of glue being worked in with a brush. The brass screws went in slowly, a quarter turn at a time. Out on the cobbled square, the morning went about its business. Ben Carter arrived at 9:30 with a box of paperbacks for the hall's informal lending shelf, an arrangement he had recently discovered and now contributed to with considerable enthusiasm. He set the books down and surveyed the scene. "I could help," he said. Mr. Collins was applying glue to a loosened joint. He indicated a chair leg. "Hold this steady. Keep it firm. Do not shift it." Ben held it. He held it well, for approximately 45 seconds. Then he adjusted his grip, very slightly, at exactly the wrong moment. The joint opened. There was a pause. Mr. Collins looked at the joint. He looked at Ben. He said, with the precision of a man who had spent 30 years marking errors of judgment, "Thank you, Ben. That was the opposite of what I needed." Ben pulled a chair from the working stack and sat at a considered distance, offering observations. Jamie Armitage arrived at 10. Assessed what was happening without comment, and borrowed a clamp from the caddy. He settled in beside Mr. Collins and got on with it. Jamie was faster. Mr. Collins was not trying to be fast. Near 11, Mr. Collins lifted one of the remaining chairs, turned it upside down, and read something on the underside of the seat. He held it there for a moment longer than the task required. Then he set it carefully to one side and moved on to the next. Jamie, sanding a repaired leg at the folding table, asked at some point whether anyone had ever kept a record of where the chairs came from. Mr. Collins said he didn't think so. "This one," he said, applying glue in a careful line, "was from the old choir. There's a pencil mark on the crossbar. 1968. Someone's handwriting." He set the chair down. "That one with the short front leg, The Tuesday whist players used to argue about it every week. They said it made a hand of cards look different, depending which way you tilted. Ben had his phone out. Mr. Collins said, without looking up, "Put that away. I was going to write it down, for the village archive." "They're not records," Mr. Collins said. "They're reasons." Ben put the phone away. Sarah appeared at 12:30, slightly breathless, to confirm that the delivery was arranged for Thursday and that she had also, helpfully, measured the stacking space by the side door. She was pleased with herself, which was Sarah's natural condition, and it was not an unpleasant thing to be around. Reverend B. Hemlock came through the vestry door 2 minutes later, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She gave one to Sarah. The conversation that followed was brief and quiet, and not conducted at any volume that required anyone else to hear it. Sarah made 2 phone calls in quick succession, then reappeared in the doorway to let everyone know that the delivery was no longer happening on Thursday, and that, in point of fact, when she really thought about it, brand new matching chairs would have looked completely wrong in here, wouldn't they? Nobody felt the need to argue. After Jamie and Ben had gone to the storeroom for more sandpaper, Mr. Collins brought out the chair he had set aside that morning. He worked on it with a care that was different from the rest. A second pass of the cloth along the frame after the joint was already clean. A screw tightened a half turn beyond what it required. Jamie came back and watched for a moment. "This one's special," he said. Mr. Collins ran his thumb along the repaired seat rail. "Margaret always chose that one," he said, "near the radiator." He picked up the cloth and kept working. Jamie went back to his side of the table. The winter coffee morning came in on a Friday with the kind of pale November light that falls flat and even through old glass and makes everything look a little more itself than usual. The hall filled the way it always did, slowly at first, then all at once. Coats went on the pegs by the south door. Cups were handed over the kitchen hatch, 2 full as always, with a biscuit balanced on the saucer. The clink of china ran through the room. The warmth that builds in a wooden hall when enough people are in it came up from the floor and the walls and the radiators that were now, finally, making a proper effort. Nobody noticed the chairs. Not a word was said about them. Nobody sat down carefully or tested a leg before committing their weight, or thought about the furniture at all. The chairs were mismatched and worn, and slightly different heights, and one had a shorter left arm that everyone had always accommodated, without quite knowing why. Someone propped the south door open briefly, then thought better of it. A chair scraped on the wooden floor as someone shifted to talk to a neighbour. The hall smelled of coffee and wet coats and the particular warmth of people who have known each other long enough not to need much excuse. The hall was full. The afternoon was what it had always been. Mr. Collins came in just after 2. He hung his coat on the last free peg and found a seat along the row near the side wall where the light from the high windows came in warm and low. The chair beside him, slightly apart from the others, stayed empty. He did not look at it. He looked at the room instead, at the cups being refilled, at Nora Field in conversation by the window, at Ben hovering near the biscuit plate with the particular expression of a man trying to look as though he had not already had 3. The hall clock marked the quarter hour, low and clear. For a long time, he had not been in this room. Not like this. The afternoon went on. He stayed.